Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. Come follow me to the Ardbeg Distillery on the Isle of Islay. This island belongs to the Inner Hebrides of Scotland. Ardbeg lies at the south coast, and you can see the white buildings from a great distance. The distillery is located directly at the coast. In the early ages, when we still had steam engines, the barley was transported to the distillery by ship. This is why the name Ardbeg is written on the walls with big letters, so the ships knew where to deliver the barley. The other two main ingredients, water and peat, are already located on the island and didn't have to be brought in with ships. The next door neighbor to the west is the Laphroaig Distillery, which is also producing a heavily peated Islay Scotch single malt whisky. The third distillery, which is just behind the horizon, is the Laphroaig Distillery. They also produce a heavily peated spirit. These three brands are known for their peatiness and contributed to the fame of the Islay malt whiskies. The distillery consists of different departments. First of all, you have the big buildings with the pagodas on top. These are the malting buildings. Here they used to produce the malt from the barley, and in the buildings with the chimneys they used to dry the malt over a peat fire. The next department are the storage houses, which are also called dunnage. In the end of the tour, we will walk through the dunnage that you can see here with the helicopter in front. The next essential department is the distillation department. This is the building with the chimney at the very left of this picture. Here they produce hot steam to distill the whiskey. Now we will land in front of the gate, and the piper will lead us into the Outback distillery. And then there's now a hint from me: always stay behind the piper. First of all, we will see the surroundings of Ardbeg, and later we will get into the buildings to get the tour of the Ardbeg distillery. This is the best weather you can have in Scotland, and now we will skip ahead to not hear the annoying sound of the helicopter. The old dunnages are really flat buildings. They have heavy bricked walls and a compressed clay floor that gives a very special atmosphere for the whiskey to mature. This is a very old sign of the Ardbeg distillery. This sign was already there when I visited the distillery in 1995. Note the triangular shaped reinforcements on the wall. Those are there to fortify the wall against the rough sea that presses against the wall during the winter month. Today the sea is nice and calm, and the water is probably very warm for Islay, so it's very inviting to take a swim. It has rained before, and there's still some water left on the casks. The air cleared, and it made our trip to Ardbeg a lot nicer. These helicopters are waiting for their liftoff. These are now the Ardbeg Cottages, and from 2013 on, you could book your holidays at the Outback Distillery. This is the most famous view that you get of the Outback Distilleries. You see it on almost every picture. But a lot has changed since the early times. The Old Kiln, the building opposite to the casks, is now a cafe where you can enjoy a nice coffee or even an Ardbeg dram. Left of the Old Kiln is the filling store, and left of the filling store is the high and big warehouse with the big letters Ardbeg written on it. Over the last years, Ardbeg decided to paint their buildings white. This small building here, the old tonnage, is the only building they left in their old natural color. Every year, half of the buildings at Ardbeg are being repainted. These old kilns are not in function anymore. The only thing they do is they represent Ardbeg as a distillery from far away. This is the parking lot. And this small door is where the tour of the Ardbeg Distillery will begin tomorrow. In the background you see the peninsula of Kintyre with the famous city Campbelltown on it. Here's the view to the Old Kiln Cafe that is currently run by Jackie Thompson. This old still is a friendly welcome to the visitors and shows them what they can expect to see here. This building here with all the small windows were the old malting floors, where the barley was turned into malt. Opposite to the car park is the same building, and on the very far end you have the kiln to dry the malt. These small buildings were used for cottages for the workers at the Ardbeg Distillery. Now we left the distillery to take a small hike to Loch Ugedal to see the water burn and where they cut the peat for their whiskey. We will skip ahead and see the tour tomorrow. It's a bit of a hazy day at the Ardbeg Distillery. This gives the whole tour a bit of an eerie character. The tour starts with a small museum. Here you see the layout of the distillery from ancient times. Also, there are a lot of old photographs and pictures in this room. The tour continues with the malt and barley bins that are not in use anymore. Now the malt comes already malted from the big Port Ellen maltings. The distillery got refurbished over the last years. All the buildings have been painted inside and outside, and the general state of the distillery is in top condition. These malt cellars now are the malt cellars that have actually been used for production. And the hammer shows you can solve everything with brute force. The malt mill grinds down the malt into a fine grist. The grist is not too fine because we don't want to produce a dort, but it's fine enough so we get all the sugar out from the malt. For the fermentation, you need yeast. Here the yeast is stored in 20 kilo packages, and with this the wash or the beer is being produced in the fermenters. The grist, or some call it the grinded malt, is now being transported into the mash tun. Here all the sugar is solved into water. It is still the old mash tun with the cast iron segments from the outside, but they refurbished it and put new equipment inside, so all the screws, valves and turners have been refurbished and they are up to standard to solve all the sugar from the malt. The closed lid is very important to keep the heat inside the mash tun and reduce the energy output from the whole distillery. The rake is slowly turning to mix the ingredients with each other. Everywhere you see big tubes and boilers with hot water, and here is the big computer to control all the temperatures inside the mash tun. The waste from the mash tun is called draff. It is being used in the agricultural industry. The final product from the mash tun is called wort. It's a liquid substance that is rather sweet. It is being stored in the underbag that you see here right in front of us. This is now the washroom. Here you see all the wash stills that make the wort into the beer. The sweet malty wort is fermented here and comes out as the beer with 8.5 to 9% alcohol. Here you see an open wash bag. It is made of Oregon pine and now being filled from the bottom to top. The floor of a building with fermenters in it should always be pervious to air. Otherwise, the CO2 in the room would build up and there would be a hazard of suffocation. The CO2 is a byproduct of the fermentation. You see it by the bubbling of the fluid. And in the later stages, there is a lot of foam and bubbles growing up in the fermenters. These are the instruments to measure the alcohol level of the beer. He takes a sample of the beer, puts in the spindle, and the spindle tells him how much alcohol is in the fluid. There are a lot of tubes and pipes and pumps to get the wash from the fermenters to the still room. And now we're entering the heart of the distillery, the still house. In the front you see the wash still. You can always identify the wash still by the watch glass on the neck of the still. In the back you see the spirit still. It's usually a bit smaller and doesn't have a watch glass, because the low wines can't boil over. Both of the stills are rather tall and are constricted at the neck just above the intermediate piece. This separates the alcohol better and the whiskey becomes smoother. If you want to know more about the shape of a pot still, follow this link to our website. In the distance you can already see the spirit safe. It is being used to measure the alcohol content and also used to regulate between the foreshots, the hard piece that is being used to make the whiskey, and all the low wines that are not suitable for the whiskey. This is the intermediate wash charger. It is being used to store any liquids between the distillations. Here one of the stillmans records the temperatures and the alcohol levels very precisely to decide whether the foreshots have already finished and the hard piece can begin. Everything is being recorded to ensure quality levels and to know if the machine is working properly. So everything you hear about someone feeling the distillation and just turning the lever when he feels like is wrong. Everything is calculated precisely, and that is the best way to make the whiskey. Everything in this process is pretty standardized and kept the same to keep a definite distillery character. The capacity of 17,000 liters is pretty big, and now Ardbeg doesn't count to the small distilleries anymore. The spirit safe is located directly above the spirit receiver. The spirit receiver stores all the content from the first distillation. The end of the distillery only reaches outside the building, and the condensers are located outside because the still building didn't grow with the size of the stills. This is a heat exchanger. It exchanges the heat between the high alcoholic hot liquids and the low alcoholic liquids that are to be heated. This is the boiler house. It produces the hot steam for the still house. You can always identify the boiler house by the chimney. Here the chimney is reinforced by 3 steel wires because Islay has such big storms. Now these are the condensers. They condense the alcohol fumes back into a liquid. They are being cooled by the process water. The process water also comes from the Laphroaig, as it has a lot of water capacity. The empty casks are being transported by truck to the island, Some of them are new, some of them are refill barrels. This is where the residual in different casks are being emptied out. You can see a bit of charcoal from the inside of a barrel. On this side, the casks are waiting for their filling. And now we're at the Ardbeg warehouse, a truly great place to be. You can see that in these small tonnages, the casks are only installed in 3 layers. And besides the concrete walkway, the floor is just made of compressed clay. This results in a higher humidity and gives the whiskey a better maturation. And finally we come to the whiskey tasting. Here we have an Outback Ugadal. And an Ardbeg definitely tastes very different if you taste it next to the sea. In the Old Kiln cafe, you will find a small room that is filled with a lot of Ardbeg whiskies. These are all the new bottlings of the Ardbeg Distillery. The specialty is that you will find all the bottles from all the markets, plus the Ardbeg committee releases that are only here at the distillery. Finally, this is the Ardbeg shop, where you find Ardbeg merchandise and gifts to bring your friends at home. Thank you for watching the distillery tour with us. If you want to know more about whiskey production, then follow this link to our website. And if you want to see more whiskey tastings or distillery tours, then hit the subscribe button.